Hey guys, like you said, I'm Taylor Thompson, and I'm a senior at Permian High School. When they asked me to come and give my testimony at Fields of Faith, I started to think about all the testimonies that I'd heard throughout my life and try to get some ideas of what I was going to say from some of those. And I began to realize that every testimony that I've ever heard is some big, elaborate, inspiring story about someone being delivered from drug addiction or alcoholism, and they were delivered from that, and that's when they decided that they were going to follow Jesus and do the will of God, and that's awesome. But I didn't have a story like that. I mean, I was born and raised in church, and I mean that literally. I was born on a Friday, and I was in church a Sunday morning being dedicated. So, I mean, I was born with two incredibly godly parents. I've got two incredibly godly brothers that are an inspiration to me and everyone around them. So you could say that my whole life I've been incredibly fortunate, and now looking back, I realize that I might have actually been a little bit too fortunate. Because being surrounded by all those godly people and all those godly things, I started to get almost a false truth about the world that I was actually getting into. And when I hit junior high and got into high school, I got a real reality check about what the world was really about and the world that we're actually living in. All the relationships that I had built and the friends that I had made became pointless because everyone that I knew began to change. They began to fall into the traps that society sets up for us. The traps of alcohol and drugs and parties and sex. Everything, all the traps that our parents warned us about when we were really little, they became real. And I had to switch from my church life that I had been so used to and been so comfortable in, and I had to move into the real world. And I began to feel really hopeless. Because I knew what they were doing was wrong, and I knew that I needed to stay on my path. I needed to do what I knew was right. But I began to feel like I was fighting against the world, and I was all by myself. And I knew that that was wrong, and I knew that I needed to stay on my path. So I had to make a decision. I had to decide to either take the easy road and take the comfortable road and do what all my friends were doing and be with everyone that I grew up with, or I could decide to do what I knew was right and do what I was raised to do and follow Christ and stay on the path that was set out for me. And I did take the road less traveled. I didn't fall into those temptations. I didn't fall into the traps of this world. And I'm here to tell you that it wasn't easy. And it's still not easy. The temptations are still there every single day in our culture. Everything that we see or do on TV and movies, celebrities, everything that we see and do is just a trap for us to fall into, and it's not easy to stay away. But I'm here to tell you that being a Christian, you're not promised an easier life. But you are promised a more fulfilling life. In Matthew 7:13 through 14, it says, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many will enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only few will find it." We're told in Scripture that we're going to be with the few when we decide to follow Jesus. And we're going to have to fight against the culture. We're going to have to fight against the majority. But later we're told in Galatians 6:9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." So I urge you tonight to stay on that path that God has set out for you. And if you veer from that path, or you haven't found that path yet, you're going to have opportunities tonight to talk to somebody, find somebody, and to find your path. Because God has a path for each and every one of you. And He wants all of you to follow it. So find somebody tonight and find the path. You can talk to people that have lived through this life. You can talk to your parents or your elders, and you can ask them what they regret throughout this life, what they regret from everything that they lived. And they'll tell you that they regret going to a certain party. They regret taking that first sip of alcohol. They regret putting that first dip in their mouth. They regret smoking that cigarette. But you're never going to find somebody that tells you that they regret following Jesus Christ. You're never going to find anyone that says they regret saying no to those friends. They regret going to church on that Sunday. You're never going to find somebody that regrets living life the way Jesus has them to live it. So I challenge each of you to find that path and to never stray from it. Thank you.